The purpose of this video is to teach you how to use enumeration controls, create sub VIs, and bundle things together in a .llb or a LabVIEW library file. We'll begin by creating our first VI, and what we want to do is have an enumeration control that chooses from among several functions, and we want each of our functions to be a sub VI. So let's start with a sub VI function, something that might be useful. Here we have our front panel that we've started with. Let's create a numeric control, something to put in, and let's have this function do addition. So we will call this addend1, addend1, and then, as we often do, we will control drag, or on the Mac option drag, to create another copy of it and automatically renumber addend2. And then if you add two things together, you end up with a sum. So now we don't want a control, we want an indicator, and a clever name for that would be sum. Okay, so there is the front panel. Let's go to the block diagram, Control E again, or you can just click on it, and we have the controls. How are we going to add these two together? Well, there are multiple ways to do this in LabVIEW. Probably the easiest is to right-click, go under the numeric controls, and find the clever function called add. We will put add there and connect the addends. You'll notice that these are thin lines. If you're not colorblind, you'll see that they're thin orange lines, indicating that you have scalar values that go on here. For fun, to make sure our very complicated addition function works, let's put some numbers in. 3 and 2. And if we run this, we get a grand total of 5. So now, to make this useful as a sub VI, we have to connect the inputs and the outputs in a useful way so that when it shows up as a sub VI, we can use it. Over here, you will see the connector panel. This one has far too many connectors on it, so we will right-click on there, and we will go down to patterns. We could sit and remove terminals until we got what we wanted, but this one's easier. Since we have two inputs and one output, this pattern here appears to be the easiest. So to connect the terminals to the controls and indicators, we will click, not right-click, but just click on that block there, then click on the corresponding control, click on this block here, corresponding control, and then this for our output, and click on the corresponding indicator. Okay, at this point, we need to save this just so that we have something. Now we're going to have a bunch of these, and it gets rather awkward if these files are strewn all over some directory someplace. So we are going to save these in a LabVIEW library. To do that, what we're going to do is click, go down to Save As. Down on the bottom here, you'll see there's a button that says New LLB. We will click on the New LLB button, and the New LLB, we can give some clever name like all of my math stuff. Okay, and so we have created a new LLB, and if you notice, it's right there. We're now going to double click that LLB, and we get this dialog here, and this is what we will call our function. We could be boring and call it add, which would make a lot of sense, but since we like to be verbose, okay, we will create a VI entitled Add Two Numbers Together. Okay, so there is our first one. Just for fun, maybe we ought to make a second one. And actually, before we do that, this icon here with the LabVIEW 7 thing doesn't look terribly useful. So let's take and edit this icon. You just double click it and it pulls up the editor. It's not the world's most useful editor, but it does function more or less. The easiest things to do are select the selection tool over here, drag across there, and hit delete, and you now have a blank slate. If you are artistic, you can use all of the artistic tools. If you are not artistic, you can use this clever tool here and for creating text. And I am going to click that. I like pretty blue text, so I'm going to have pretty blue text, and I'm going to give this a real clever name. I'm going to call it add. It didn't center very well, so let's try clicking someplace else with it. And if we want, we can have that be good enough. There are other things that you can do with the font size and things of that nature, but that looks good enough for the moment. We will click OK, and now you'll see that our icon has the very clever title of add. We will save it again. Now, at this point, since we want one that also does subtract, what I'm going to do is a simple save as, and we will substitute copy for original in the memory. You can do all sorts of other things with it, but we will do that at the moment. And this one we will call subtract. And since we like to be verbose, and we will save that. Now it no longer works as we wanted it to, and add end doesn't make a lot of sense. And there are official math terms for this, but we are going to use the unofficial math terms. We will call this the subtractee, the number that will have something subtracted from it. And we will call this the subtractor, the number that is going to be subtracted from the subtractee, and we will call this difference. And I suppose if you wanted to get fancy, you could title it something else, but we have done that. Our icons are still connected to the original terminal, so that's fine, but this will just have to go. So we will select over it, delete it, and then we could do something fancy like put a minus sign, but I kind of like that. Let's try this again. And let's see if we can get it to delete. Okay, we got it to delete. Now we will put our text and it will center, and we'll call it sub. You could get fancier, but that will do for our purposes here. Okay, so now if we save this, we're in good shape because 3 minus 2 is 5, right? Or did we forget something? Oh, I guess we did forget something. That is, we don't want this addition. We probably want a subtraction. So if we right-click on it, we can find the thing that says replace, and it will take us right to the numeric palette if we want. Do that again. Replace numeric palette and choose subtract, and there we go. It now subtracts. Let's see if it works. Okay. And we could do this for additional items if we want, but we have these two saved into our library. Perhaps we ought to do one more that uses both of them. So I'm going to do a new VI, and this one I want it to take 2 arguments and either add or subtract depending on what I choose, and then give me the results. So I again will have a numeric control. I'll call it arg1, and since I'm lazy, I will control drag and have arg2, and then we need a result, so we will have a numeric indicator, not a control, and we will call this result. Okay, so there I have my result, and it looks all good and exciting. I could get fancy and align things with various tools and things of that nature. Again, to notice the difference between an indicator and a control. The control has the little arrows so that you can adjust things up and down. Like that. And the result doesn't. It's also slightly grayed out. Okay, we need some way to choose between these two things. So if we again look at our controls, we have ring and enumeration, and you can do text ring or menu ring. Either of those will work fine. Enumeration will actually work as well, but we are going to choose menu ring just for fun, and I will put it there, and I will entitle that choose. Now this one is a little bit trickier. If you look at, when you click on it, not much happens because there's not much in there. What I'm going to do is I am going to edit the things here. And so I'll go down to edit items and wait a little bit, and a dialog will come up. And we will have sequential values. And the first one, I'm going to give the very clever title add, and it will have the value 0. And then we will, well, obviously the insert was interesting, so we will move that down. So our 0 is add, and this one we will have subtract. So now we have a control that with any luck we'll go back and look, and here we can choose either to add something or subtract something depending on what we want, and we could obviously continue that for as long as we want. If we run the VI now, not much will happen because we haven't given it any internals, but we can run it anyway and not much happens, as we said. So let's look at the block diagram. We've got argument 1, argument 2, and choose for some results. Okay, so now how are we going to choose something? Well, LabVIEW has a number of things called structures. Let's see if any of these might be useful. This one here is called a case structure, and that means that you can choose among various cases that you do things with. So let's take a case structure and put it right in here. It presently is labeled true and false, and that might or might not be useful, but let's connect this to our little question mark there, and suddenly it is now case 0 and case 1, and we can actually click on that and call that add, which is the default, and this one we can click on and call subtract. Or whatever you want. That didn't work terribly well. So let's see if we can get rid of the enclosing things there and put a comma. See if that makes life better. It did not make life better. So there is a way to do this Let's try some various steps and see if we can somehow convince it that it wants to behave itself. Ah, there we go. So we have the text subtract and we have the text add, and that lets us know what's going on according to which we have chosen. So now here are two arguments. So we want to grab our previous VI, but in the meantime, let's save this one as it is. So we will save as, and we want to go put it in the LLB, the All of My Math Stuff LLB, and for lack of a better term, we will call this main VI. You could call it something much more clever, but that's what we're going to call it. And now that we've saved it, let's take and right-click, and again, we'll go to our Select a VI. This time we'll go to All of My Math Stuff, and we will choose Add Two Numbers Together, OK, and we will put it there. And notice it has our little word add there. And if we go over it, the connectors are addend1, addend2, and sum, exactly what we told them to be. So what we will do is we will connect addend1 to argument 1, addend2 to argument 2, and then we will connect the sum to the result like that. Notice this is hollow. That means that we don't have enough for all of the controls that we want. So let's go to this one here, and we can add the second one. Again, go down to Select a VI, and we'll open All of My Math Stuff, and we will subtract one number from another there, and we will put it there, and we will connect the argument 1, argument 2, and the difference. Now we filled it up, so it's orange and everyone's happy. They might not be pleased. It says case structure selector values have wrong type. So basically that means we're just going to have to edit this and get rid of the stuff that it didn't like and figure out how to do that some other way. And so we'll go like that, see if it is happy. Okay, so it says something's missing, so we'll click there and go. And see if the default will work. Ah, now everyone's happy. So this is 0, default, and this is 1. So however we run it, it should be fine. We'll save, and let's see if it works. We are presently on subtract. Let's go to add and run. We get 5. Subtract and run. We get 1. We could, of course, make this a sub VI and some other sub VI, and we could extend this with multiply, divide, exponentiate, all sorts of other functions if we wanted, and have our own little handy-dandy calculator here. Other formats we could do as well, but this gives you the idea, and everything is saved together in one LabVIEW library, so that you don't have to make sure that you transfer all of the files when you're going to a different computer or something of that nature.